flight attendants Jenny and Paula are preparing for their upcoming journey at a Los Angeles airport. During their conversation, Captain Forrest and his co-pilot Wilsey observe that they won't be carrying many passengers tonight because of the thunderstorms. Wilsey takes medication as well because he's not feeling well. The passengers for tonight are then greeted by the personnel. Teenage George always travels alone and detests being suffocated. Bev is accompanied by her spouse, Dr. Kingston, who is unable to move or talk due to Parkinson's disease. Sheila, an Army medic, is anxious about taking off, while Louise is unwinding with her cat. Vorst and Nika are enthusiastic foreigners with poor English skills, while Niall and Susan are expecting a baby and are quite hygienic, so they clean their seats before sitting. Ralph gets bitten while assisting Henry in placing the hamster cage in the storage bin. Henry delivered the cage. Henry is forced to send the cage to the cargo hold by the flight attendants since it won't fit. Businessman Preston appears to have the same illness as Wilsey, as he is constantly sneezing. Jenny has to tell Niall to hang up his phone when the plane finally takes off, and when he doesn't, Henry has to tell him to. After an argument and an outburst from both guys, Jenny tells them to return to their seats and threatens to have them arrested upon landing if they misbehave. After that, Henry makes flirtatious remarks about the poor condition of manners in society and tells Jenny about his PhD. A short while later, Henry discovers through the news that the Los Angeles apartment building of the Centers for Disease Control has been besieged. Ralph, who isn't feeling well, asks for some water and fixes his gaze on his thumb wound. He's sitting in an odd way, and Jenny sees. When she goes to check on him, he throws up all over her. The flight attendants do their utmost to tend to him while his mouth is foaming and he asks to get off. The cat is sneaking around eating vomit off the floor, and nobody sees. Jenny walks to wipe up the puke from her body after ditching the guy with Paula, but Ralph dashes down the hallway and knocks her down. He begins banging on the door to the cockpit, demanding that the aircraft halt, so Wilsey locks the door per procedure and Forrest notifies ground control of the problem. Henry tries to stop Ralph, but George and Henry are both easily overwhelmed. Then Preston, George, Paula, and Sheila join forces with Henry to restrain Ralph until he passes out. They bind his wrists with plastic splints. After that, Sheila makes sure no one was hurt, and Jenny freaks out behind closed doors, telling Paula how she let Paula down in an emergency. At that point, Forrest instructs everyone to take their seats and declares that he has been given the go-ahead to land. The attendants instruct everyone to keep their heads down as the plane trembles violently as it descends. Ralph's head keeps banging and sliding, so Jenny and Paula have to work hard to get him to take a seat. Ralph bites her nose, seriously hurting her, and wakes up with red eyes while Paul fumbles with the seatbelt. Ralph then loses his mind, and the other passengers have to band together once more to force him into the restroom and lock him there. When the plane eventually lands, Sheila wraps a scarf around Paul's face and administers some medication from the emergency first aid box to keep her from going into shock. However, she is bleeding profusely and needs to be seen right away. Forrest chooses an unassigned gate in defiance of the rules because he is irate that ground control orders them to wait despite their knowledge of the emergency. Fortunately, baggage handler Ed notices the approaching aircraft and quickly opens the gate. With the exception of Bev and Kingston, who require assistance moving, everyone else frantically exits the aircraft while Forrest and Wilsey hold the restroom door closed. Ed leads the gang to the opposite side of the fence, but no one responds to his radio appeal and the door is locked. They are forced to follow Ed through an employee entrance in order to get into the airport staging area. When Ed gets to the other doors after the party ascends the stairs, he's startled to see that they're all locked, which never happens. He verifies that they are on lockdown and that everything they do will be captured on the security cameras, which are still in operation, when he checks the power box. A disagreement on what to do next breaks out, but is cut short by the abrupt siren sound. They see police cars and ambulances outside through a window, but the window is covered. The gang has been placed under quarantine and must wait for assistance, a voice declares. Calling their families to inform them of the situation, the passengers then band together to scream at Jenny, viewing her as a symbol of the airline's choices. Thankfully, Sheila breaks the renting to mention that she has a medical kit in her suitcase that might help Paula survive a few more hours. Jenny is helpless to protect herself. While Jenny is searching for Sheila's bags, Ed and a few other passengers accompany her, and just then the power goes out. When they get back to the plane, Ed uses his flashlight to lead them, and they find that Woolsey and Forrest have vanished. Jenny is terrified to discover blood all over the bathroom as she opens it. As Preston gets up to grab his laptop, he runs into Kingston, who is by himself. When the others are left wondering what happened to Kingston's wife, he points with his eyes to some plastic handcuffs that have been bitten through and left on the floor. Ed is in the midst of chopping the carpet to make way for a hatch that leads straight to the baggage hold. While Niall reaches inside his suitcase for a revolver, Jenny reaches for Sheila's medical kit. When a rodent crosses his path, Ed is scared and chases it away, claiming it's a rat. Henry, on the other hand, believes it's just one of his hamsters since he's discovered the shattered cage. Jenny sees Preston's laptop covered in blood when she emerges from the hold and looks around. At the end of the hallway, Woolsey is covered in blood, growling, and sprinting on all fours. Jenny is attacked by an infected Forrest who suddenly materializes behind her. The others rush to his aid, but their blows are ineffective, so Niall shoots him to death while some of Forrest's blood dribbles across his face. Following the group's escape from the aircraft, they discover Preston comatose after being bitten on the back of the neck, and Kingston flung from his wheelchair in the gate corridor. Jenny, who is nearby, discovers Bev sobbing and pleading for aid before she abruptly changes and begins to attack as well. Luckily, Jenny outpaces her, and the men force the door shut to keep her out. Sheila tries her best to tend to Paula while the gang returns to the others. Even after Susan wipes the blood from Niall's face, they still kiss. Jenny looks about, noticing droplets of blood on the floor and questioning their source, as Henry and Ed arrange furniture in front of the door to keep Bev out. Jenny finally loses her cool and orders everyone to stop talking, assuming command in the captain's place. Jenny recalls the building that was quarantined on the news, and Sheila clarifies that there is no known disease associated with it. A rat with extremely red eyes is seen close by, but Kingston can hardly hear him hum. Before George can remove it, the rat manages to bite him after landing on his head. Sheila tends to the wound while the guys catch the rat in a pail. Next, in case George and Paula transform as well, the group decides to put them in a container. After grabbing the rat with a glove, Ed discovers that it has a tag on its leg, indicating that it escaped from a lab. George claims Henry brought it and made up the story about the hamsters since he was positive he had previously seen long tails in the cage. Jenny pulls Henry away to get the truth when he disputes it, and Henry cries that he didn't, pointing out that lab rats couldn't have passed the security check. As Henry tries to dissuade Ralph from jumping on Jenny, he unexpectedly emerges and gives Jenny the comforting hug. When they hear Ralph screaming, the others run to aid and use their combined might to choke him with a hose. Ed hears on the radio at that very moment that the CDC has finally arrived. When the gathering assembles at the door, the 4 officers enter rather than let them go. After removing Niall's firearm and the rat from the group and holding them at gunpoint, they proceed to inject Paula and Kingston. The officers merely respond that it's protocol when the group demands an explanation. The others are then forced to consent to an injection by the authorities. Louise offers to volunteer first since everyone else is afraid, but her cat bites her neck and escapes before she can get the injection. In the midst of an officer firing away, missing every shot, Kingston eventually changes and leaps to bite the man. When the other police go to remove their comrade after shooting Kingston down, they discover that the door is locked. Vorst takes advantage of the opportunity to pursue them while they shoot at it to push it open and flee. As soon as the police spot them, they open fire, killing everyone but one agent, who is lightly hurt in the leg. The group shuts the door after dragging the remaining agent inside. They bolt to hide inside a container as they hear the roars of the infected humans approaching at that very moment. When Susan sees that Niall is frothing at the mouth, she pauses, and the others have to pull her in while they explain that he is also afflicted. Sheila notes that each injection had a distinct hue, indicating that each person was receiving a unique substance rather than merely protocol when the container is closed. Henry says he grabbed a gun, and he makes the cop tell what he knows. It turns out that he is actually affiliated with the Homeland Security-based Chemical Biological Domestic Terrorism, CBDT, outfit rather than the CDC. A few hours ago, one of their units went to the flat in LA, but no one came out. They discovered a cult's bioterror laboratory in the attic. They made things worse by trying to find a cure based on a survivor, suggesting that this group would be the subject of the next human study. The officer removes Henry's gun and self-deletes after concluding that the rats are infected. Ed recalls that this terminal frequently floods due to an ancient drainage tunnel, so if they find it, they may be able to escape through it. Nika breaks down during this moment. Henry goes to kill Woolsey as he suddenly emerges from an opening on top of the container and takes Ed's hand, but he runs out of bullets. George obeys Ed's command to press a button, which causes the container to rise and crush Woolsey against the beam. After exiting the container, Jenny realizes Henry is gone and Ed leads the group across the area. As Nika walks in the rear, the others quickly flee up the stairs as she is abruptly pulled away by something. Henry is reaching for a bag with another gun covertly. Jenny stumbles upon Paula, who has also changed, while the group flees. Jenny fights the creature with a wrench until she drives her over the platform, killing her, after which she must accept that her companion is gone. After arriving at an office, the party searches for the terminal drawings, which provide a route through a wall to the drainage tunnel. George confesses that he stole Henry's luggage in the interim, and that inside were dubious-looking lab experiment records and an enigmatic box. Susan and Niall discover them at that very moment and attempt to attack, but Henry returns and shoots them both before they can attack. George takes advantage of Ed noticing that Henry has been bitten to open the box, which reveals a syringe and a large amount of medication. Henry eventually acknowledges that he brought the rats and clarifies that he is a member of the cult the officer had indicated. Their aim is to purge the Earth of humans, who are becoming more aggressive and destructive by the day. Ed charges at Henry to stop him, only to be shot dead when Henry threatens to kill Jenny if George doesn't give up the antidote. Now that the others are terrified, Henry is given the antidote, which he combines with his own blood and injects into his eye, revealing that his group has followers in a number of different organizations, which is how he was able to get the rats past security. Henry is now prepared to go and wants to take George hostage. Henry knocks Jenny down when she tries to stop him, takes the child and the plans, and flees. Jenny is rather lightheaded, so Sheila leaves first. A few minutes later, Jenny emerges as well, and an infected Preston finds her. After a chase, Jenny had to push Preston away since he almost clutches her. After that, she kills him by luring him into a machine and beating his head with a hatch cover. Later, when she keeps looking for George, she needs to go in a new direction after spotting a changed Nika standing close by. As she enters a different room, Sheila, who has taken the officer's thermal goggles, runs into her. After putting them on Jenny and confessing that she had been bitten, she encourages Jenny to pursue George so she can buy herself some more time. Returning to the main room, Sheila speaks loudly to attract the attention of the surviving infected, who then rush to kill her. Jenny discovers a hole in the wall that Henry had dug to follow the tunnel, and just as she is ready to enter, Louise grabs her. She strikes Louise with the wrench till she falls on the ground. Subsequently, Jenny uses the goggles to see blood droplets on the floor as she moves across the area between the walls. Even though they're just mice and not lab rats, she feels frightened when she encounters animals. Jenny discovers Henry's clothing and the blueprints close to a ladder leading into the drainage tunnel after following the blood trail. Glancing downward, she discovers George, who informs her that Henry has also changed and the antidote was ineffective. Jenny falls, disobeying George's warnings, and finds some blood on her goggles. She drops the goggles as Henry suddenly shows up and assaults her before he starts flinging her around. Jenny makes every effort to stop him, but George puts on the goggles, grabs the gun, and shoots Henry to death. Jenny, free at last, hands the goggles back to Henry and uses the wrench to deliver a last hit to his skull. Huge flames start to shoot down the hatch at that precise moment, indicating that the squads outside are burning down the terminal. Sadly, the escape is closed, but Jenny discovers a baggage tunnel and opens it. Because George is too afraid to descend that far, Jenny hands him the goggles and lets him go ahead of everyone else for safety. The two run as fast as they can when they hear explosions outside, but Jenny soon gets fatigued and finds out she's infected. When George turns around, he sees that she is throwing up, but he still won't let her go. Jenny consents to follow him indefinitely for his benefit alone. They eventually locate the bar-obstructed exit. When George turns back, a changed Jenny is reaching through the bars to attack him. George is able to just walk through them. Fortunately, she is too large to fit through, so George removes his jacket to free himself. After that, George is able to leave the airport at last. Louise's cat manages to escape as well and travels to the city in the interim.